Hello all, welcome back. In this video, we are going to look at ARM templates, and this is lesson 4 of the first module. We look at the overview of this lesson. First, we will look at why do we need to use ARM templates, and we will look at its structure. For example, how does the schema look like? What are the parameters we can use? What are variables? And finally, we will look at where to find quick start templates, and finally with a demonstration. So if we look at why we need to use ARM templates. So ARM templates is a JSON file which represents the entire infrastructure as a code. We can use same templates again and again to recreate the same set of resources, and it improves consistency because we can recreate the environment either development, production or quality assurance. It helps in expressing the complex deployment as well. For example, in my application, I can specify what are all the resources needed and what are all the customization needed in each of the resources as well. So instead of following two different approaches, one for provisioning and another for configuration, we can specify both in a single JSON template. And since we can use the same ARM template again and again to recreate, there is no manual effort involved, and it helps in reducing errors. Also, it promotes reuse of the code. We can split the templates into multiple modules. Say, for example, we can have a different template for database resources and a different template for web server resources and different template for app server resources. And based on the application requirement, we can combine those templates and we can trigger the deployment. So this helps in modularization, and the orchestration is very simple as well. And if we look at the schema of the template, it's a simple JSON file which defines all the resource manager resources in the deployment. If you look at the right hand side of the slide, we have a key value paths structure, and each key is normally a string, and the value may be either a string, number, or a boolean like true or false. Or if we have multiple values, then we can define it as a list of values, or we can even specify an altogether entire object. The first two lines of the template mentions the schema and content version, and these are generally the fixed options, and users don't need to worry anything about it. The next thing is what we call parameters. So whenever we are deploying a template, there might be some values which we need to pass differently each and every time. Say for example, when we are deploying a VM, the VM name might be different each and every time. And if you see the example which is mentioned in the slide, you have two parameters to define. One is the admin username and another is the admin password. So those two value changes whenever we trigger a template. So we use different set of passwords for different environment. So this is what we call it as parameters. And next is what we call variables. Let's say if we want to use a value again and again in the template, we define that value as a variable instead of using it multiple times. For example, we can use virtual network name as a variable and define my actual name of the VNet, that variable's value section. And after that, inside the template, whenever I want to refer the virtual network, I can just specify the name of the variable called virtual network name. So this helps the template easier to maintain, because if I want to update this value, I can just go ahead and update in the variable section. So before jump on to the quick start template, I just wanted to highlight other option called resource section as well. And this is the area where we need to specify what are all the resources which we need to deploy. So there are multiple resources which we might need to create, and hence those are mentioned as a list of values. And finally, there is an option called output section, and in that section, if we want to respond to user with some values, say for example, during a VM creation, we might want to specify the fully qualified domain name of the VM which was created. We might use output section to print those outputs. Now we have seen the structure of ARM template, but where to start when I'm ready to create those templates? So we have a lot of quick start template available as uh, part of the resources. And if we navigate to the Azure portal, there is a bunch of templates which is open sourced both by Microsoft and by the partner and the community. And we will be able to search what are all the quick start templates which we need. Here, for example, I'm showing you how to deploy a simple Windows virtual machine. If we open that template, we will be able to see a short description of what this template actually does and what are all the parameters we need to pass and description of those parameters. And if we scroll a bit down, we will be able to see the PowerShell commands and Azure CLI commands which we want to use to deploy this template. Now I have two options, either to deploy it on Azure or I can browse it on GitHub. If I open browse it on GitHub, I'll be able to see 4 files, and we need to consider mainly the two files, Azure deploy.json and Azure deploy parameters.json. We've opened the Azure deploy.json. This is the actual ARM template which we were looking at. So it has a command structure called schema, content version, and there are a bunch of parameter section, and finally a bunch of variables, and again a list of resources defined like storage account, public IP address, VNets, network interfaces, and finally the virtual machines. After that, there is the output section which outputs the domain name after creating the VM. Now if we look at Azure deploy.parameters.json, we have different parameters called admin username, admin password, and DNS prefix. So we can customize these parameters during the deployment. So we can either directly deploy Azure deploy.json file, and if we didn't specify any of the default values for parameters, those will be prompted during the deployment. If we pass both files called Azure deploy.parameters.json as well, then it won't ask for parameters in real time. That's the only difference. Now I'm trying to deploy it on Azure by clicking on deploy to Azure button, and this will pass the Azure deploy.json file as the input, and it will directly land in Azure portal, that VM creation page. Now I have an option to edit the template. So if I want to modify some of the resources which I need to create, I can edit the template here. But apart from that, we can directly specify what all the resources needed. And for this particular deployment, I am trying to create a new resource group called demo.org in EST-US region, and I am specifying the username and password. And I need to specify an unique DNS name. And I'm okay with the default OS version and the location as well. Finally, I click on agree and I click on purchase. So it will first validate whether my template is right, and once it's fine, it will submit the deployment. Now it has submitted the deployment, and if we click on notification, we will be able to see the deployment status. It will take a while to get it deployed, but before that, I would like to highlight how we can trigger the same ARM template from PowerShell. For this purpose, I use a template from GitHub which helps to create a basic web app. And if we look at this ARM template, so there are a bunch of parameters called web app name and other information like location. And if you look at other parameters except the web app name, we have a default value specified for each and every one. So we don't really need to specify it mandatorily. After that, there are a couple of variables, and under the resources section, we have app service plan created and a web app created as well. And under the Azure deploy.parameters.json, we have the web app name specified. So I have downloaded these two files in my local, and I have updated the Azure deploy.parameters.json to pass the right parameters. Now I once switch on to the PowerShell, I can create a new resource group under the name ARM demo.org and under the location East US. I execute the code snippet and it will go ahead and create a new resource group. Now the resource group creation is successful, and next thing is I'm going to deploy an ARM template. So I am in wrong location. That's why I'm getting the error that we are not able to find the ARM template. I navigate to the right folder, and once again I execute this commandlet. It will deploy the file called azure deploy.json, and it will pick the parameters from azure deploy.parameters.json. So it will take a while, but we can switch to Azure portal to have a look at what exactly it's currently deploying. So in the browser, I'm able to see the previous deployment of deploying Windows virtual machine has been successful now. And if I go on to resource groups under demo RG, I'm able to see all the resources which is created as part of deployment. I have one storage account, my network interface, my virtual network, and the virtual machine, and a couple of voice disk and the data disk. And when I click on the Windows VM, I'll be able to see the IP address which I need to connect. So there is a public IP address and a private IP address as well, and there is a DNS name as well. I can RDP to this VM using this DNS name. Now coming on to the second deployment from PowerShell, I have this resource group called armdemo-rg, and it's in the process of creating the resources. Now it has created an app service plan, and it will still create a web app. So there is an option called deployments under settings. If we go into that, we will be able to see in real time what is happening behind the hoods. So when I click on deployment name called Azure deploy, so currently it has created the server form and the deployment is still underway. So now it's complete, and under the deployment details, I can see it has created a new website as well. So coming on to the overview, I should be able to see two resources. Now the web app is visible, and if I click on it, I'll be able to see the properties of the web app. So under which resource group it is there, what region it is deployed, what is the current status, and the URL as well. And I can browse this URL, have a look at whether it's successfully deployed. Now I'm able to see a sample landing page and the deployment is successful. Now if I switch back to PowerShell, it's still showing the status as deploying, but yeah, so it's doing the final steps in completing the deployment. So now the deployment has been completed and we are able to see the provisioning state has succeeded. So that's all for this video. See you in the next video. Thank you.